I see you found our little hiding spot in the universe. Don't get too comfortable. This is a place where you will find those with an experience that's out of this world, or possibly deep within your life. I welcome you to the Oracles with James Tyson. Lean forward and listen. We will pull you into a supernatural journey with guests from around the world, each one experiencing some of the most extraordinary phenomena this wee planet has to offer. Now, here are the Oracles with James Tyson.
Thank you, Liam, and thank you, listener, for tuning into today's episode of the Oracles with James Tyson. It's me, James, and today with us is my friend Joanna. Now, Joanna used to appear on a live internet radio show I had a few years ago on an episode called Two Mediums and a Large, where people would call in, and two of the mediums, and me being the large, I wouldn't do the readings, the mediums would. And we're going to talk a little bit about Joanna's history and how she got into mediumship, starting off kind of wanting to help people. Actually, she started off working in an office, got a part-time gig going to school as a clinical hypnotherapist, which was kind of cool. And how that kind of opened the doors for her reading, and how she first showed up got a table at a psychic fair and was reading cards for them. We talk a little bit about the cards reading for her too, because like a lot of people who do reading and who do mediumship, the cards aren't really anything other than a focus point for actually, almost the client. They like seeing the cards, as opposed to tarot cards where each card means something. Yeah, okay, we can you can kind of show the client that, okay, this is death, which means everything's going to be good. It's a new beginning. Off you go, and that kind of thing. But we touch very, very briefly on that. But we do get into learning to provide information to the client. Like, how do you get information, process it, and say it out loud to them that's not going to freak the heck out of them? You don't come out and say, hey, your mom's falling off a bridge tomorrow. Well, yeah, honestly, you don't get that kind of information anyway, but there is ways to articulate it and not completely freak somebody out. And whether or not you just, in my case, you'll have a spirit come through, a dead person come through, not a ghost, but actual dead relative come through and say, hey, do you mind passing on this information to the person here? And I get that walking down the street, and then I have to articulate how I approach that person, because they've got this relative jumping up and down saying, hey, since you're a medium and I have this information and you have to tell them this, and you can't really just stop the person and say, hey, there's a dead lady beside you holding a grapefruit and with an umbrella and wants to tell you that the blue car that you bought yesterday is going to break down. Well, that is one of those things you totally freak people out about. And I always believe too, and I've been told this by numerous psychics who want to dictate how I do things because control and ego. You just don't read for somebody without their consent. And that's the human way of looking at things. The woo-woo side of things, if the universe is telling a dead relative of theirs or somebody acting on behalf of their guides to come through and get my attention, I have a message they have a message through me that person obviously needs to hear pretty quick. So then it's me trying to, how am I going to broach this? Hey, nice sweater. By the way, your grandmother is yelling and screaming about something that you're doing. Anyway, we touch a little bit about it. We touch a little more than a little bit about that. We talk about her spirit guides, and for those of you in the woo-woo community know what a spirit guide is, that's the kind of beings we get information from. And it's kind of funny, we talk about when a few years ago, for everybody, psychics around the world had ETs, extraterrestrials, aliens, non-Earth beings, step in and start running things. But you had to give them permission to. And those who were very, very tuned in, they had a choice. And some friends of mine, we talk about that said, I'm good. You guys can back off for now. And we talk about where Joanna's are now, and who's in there guiding her. And we talk about some stuff where she did have an ET come through, and it was kind of fun. We got to talk to him about what a UFO, or what Sasquatch were, what a Bigfoot was, what was a Loch Ness Monster. We had an episode years ago all about that. We actually got to go through and talk to this fellow. I think we called him Rob, or she called him Rob back then. Got a bunch of very, very cool information. And we touched a little bit on that. We also, in the second half, we talk about Mother Ayahuasca and what Joanna came away with in the ceremonies in South America that she's gone through. And this is kind of where the healing modalities come from. What was she shown during the ceremonies, and what is her path at this time of her life? And we talk about a lot of interesting things, how death is even a child's death, what that means in relation to how it affects the others in the family group, and the various what ifs. What if when a baby is born with cancer and dies, is that spirit, is that soul actually just coming in it for a temporary purpose, and what would that purpose be? And we expand on a few ideas and get her to articulate a little bit better than I'm doing right now on what her belief system is on that, and then what my belief system is on it. We come away still friends. So that's what we're going to be up to. I want you to sit back if you like psychics and you're interested in the development of a psychic and how they've been growing, or how a psychic grows from a psychic medium to a healer. It's kind of a nice little episode with Joanna we'll talk about. Now, Joanna, if you want to follow along at home, you can go joannathemedium.com. Again, that's joannathemedium.com. Please, if you like horoscopes, she does an entire every month on YouTube. Please subscribe to her YouTube channel, Joanna the Medium, and she'll give every zodiac sign a good chunk, just a reading every month, puts it out on her YouTube channel. Again, Joanna the Medium, and joannathemedium.com for her website. She is still doing mediumship. So if you do want to have a reading, she's still doing that, and she is doing healing, and it's kind of fascinating too. It's I've known her for a long time, and it's really cool that she's moved on and kind of opening that side of herself up to help others. And that's who Joanna is. Let's bring her in now. Joanna, how are you today?
I am great, James. How are you?
I am well here in the apocalypse. It's been going, well, it's an interesting time for us all.
Sure is.
Now, we've known each other for many, many weeks here, a few years. I first met you when you used to come on my live internet radio show, which had the episode every couple of Sundays. It was two mediums and a large, and thank goodness you weren't one of the large ones. Mm-hmm. You were one of the mediums, and things have really picked up in your life. Just for my listener who doesn't know who you are, tell me a little bit about your background and how you got into the actual mediumship side of things.
I'm trying to think the best way to describe it without going in circles. So I guess I'll start about 16, 17 years ago or so. I had this real need to do something more with my life other than what I was doing, which is basically working in an office, being an executive assistant, yada, yada, yada. I've always had this kind of a knowing, like I'm sure everybody else does, that there was something more that I was meant to do, but for some reason it just wasn't really, it wasn't actualizing itself. So after some digging and some exploration, I ended up taking a clinical hypnotherapy course. That was about 15 or so years ago. I took it primarily for self-interest, although I also figured, with my logical thinking, that I would do it as a side hobby, get a little bit paid for a little bit. And then at some point when I retire, hopefully earlier rather than later, I would end up kind of doing that full time. So it wasn't really like, okay, let's change my career per se. It was more, this is what interests me. I've had a real desire to understand, and I had a fascination with how the mind works. So it kind of fell with the interests for me. I started to work with hypnotherapy, having sessions, and the mediumship really was born out of that. Was it because it was not there before? No, I don't think so. I feel getting in tune with a deeper part of me, which I feel is essential when you're doing something like hypnotherapy. You really have to understand yourself deeply. It started to come out, and the way it started to come out is during sessions, I would start become aware and sometimes hearing voices, though they were not audible voices. There were voices in my mind, but they were very distinct voices. They didn't sound like me. Most of the time was like a male voice that gave me almost like direction where to take a client and how to take the client there. So I would take that into the session and I would follow that intuition. And it turned out that the sessions would become very powerful. So the more I listened to it, the more I implemented it, the more I noticed the impact it was having on my clients. So that kind of started scratching my head, and I thought there is something there. And as time went on, I started to get a little bit used to that. And I don't even remember exactly where the switch off happened, because it was a gradual change, so to speak. But it was a few years working with hypnotherapy that I became aware that there's this other aspect of me is coming out and wants to play. And long story short, I knew somebody who was doing tarot cards, and she said to me, she says, well, you can read cards. And I kind of started to laugh. I said, I can't read cards. And she says, well, yes, you can. That's what you're doing right now. So I thought, isn't that interesting? There was a psychic fair happening the following weekend. And she said, hey, I know somebody who runs psychic fairs. Why don't you give her a call and see if she can fit you in, if she has a table for you. If it's meant for you to be, you'll be there. So I kind of didn't think much about it. And I connected with this lady. And she says, oh, isn't that interesting? Somebody just canceled the table. You can have it. I'm like, oh, God. So I took the table. I don't even remember the first time I actually did a reading on psychic fair, but I'm sure I was so scared that I blocked it out of my memory. But the long story short is that's basically how it began. And one of the first experiences I had was at a spiritualist church. And I will never forget this because I was fairly new at this reading cards thing. Even when I say reading cards, that's actually not factually correct, because I still to this day don't know how to read cards. I look at pictures and I now know some of the meanings, but they speak to me in a different way than the traditional meaning. So when people talk about reading cards, I do my own thing. I don't really know how to read cards the regular way. But anyway, I remember there was a lady there sitting in front of me and we were talking, and a little girl in spirit came through, and I understood that to be her daughter. And she asked me to say these words to her. She said, "It wasn't your fault." And when I said these words to her, she became unraveled. She left. That scared me, because I thought, oh my God, what did I do? It really impacted me quite profoundly. And I remember leaving the room, and the girl who was running the psychic fair came up. She says, Joanna, you didn't do anything wrong. You gave her a message that she needed to hear. And at that moment, and there were many afterwards, but at that moment I realized that I am in a very interesting position, where someone is sitting in front of me and they're wide open and they're very vulnerable. And then there is me not knowing what to expect. And then there is this other aspect of me which cannot be seen, but it's coming through me. And I am delivering a message that has this profound effect on a person. And that in itself scared me.
I could definitely see that. It's coming to the realization that you have that ability and that power to influence another human being's life very quickly, and it's just being a conduit for information. Right.
At that time, I took her emotional discomfort as I took it upon myself almost as I felt bad for what had happened. I felt bad that she reacted this way, but I also understood that it is precisely because of what I said, she had that reaction, but that was necessary. it was necessary for her to have almost like this emotional purge. And I remember I had, it took me a while to kind of get my head wrapped around it, because here I am, I'm giving messages, but then there's somebody who's hoping to get some message, and I'm sure she was hoping to get a message from her daughter, but she was hit from the left field that she wasn't expecting it. And I remember, I think I finished, I couldn't continue because it really affected me. I do not want people to be upset. That's the last thing I want. But I came to realize that with this kind of work, there is some healing often happens in a way that at the beginning can look pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah, I could see it's ripping the Band-Aid off.
Yeah. So that's one of the first experiences that I had that I remember. Now, the second experience was a few years later, and it was of a similar nature. I remember being at the gym, and I get a lot of my stuff at the gym. Well, not now, because now it's not open. Because I'm in my own thing, I'm focusing on something so that, information comes freely, it flows freely. And I remember sitting at the gym, I was doing it on a machine, and I had this awareness. And the awareness was that it was an image. The image was that I had a hand extended out, and on my hand, on the palm of my hand, was a person standing. So it's a metaphor, right? And this person was willingly opening themselves to me. They were very vulnerable. And because they were standing on my palm, if my intention was not of kindness, I could harm them. And I saw the vulnerability of the person that's coming to me, and at the same time, the position I'm in, where if I am ill-intended, I can cause harm. Now, I'm not saying I'm all this powerful person, I'm going to cause harm. It's not what I mean. What I'm saying is, when a person comes to you vulnerable, and your intention or my intention is not pure, then it can create, well, not necessarily a negative, but a profound, not so negative result. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. I find a lot of what we're talking about is intention-based. And whether you're doing Reiki or an energy healing or any kind of work, if you don't come in with a pure and positive intention, it's causing a ripple effect that is a negative to the person you're dealing with.
Bingo. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I totally understand what you mean.
And I remember the awareness of being in that position where a person opens themselves up to me, and they're raw, they're vulnerable, they're wide open about things they often don't talk to anybody else about. And I remember having the awareness of that, and it scared me. It humbled me, and it scared me at the same time. And I remember, I think I even began to cry. There were so many things that were coming at me at once, but I remember just the awareness of being in this position where someone comes in and allows themselves to be vulnerable. And if I wasn't a person with pure intentions, I could do harm. And I'll never forget that. Yeah.
It's the universe has given you a lightsaber. It's given you some pretty I don't hate to say dangerous, but pretty powerful information. Yeah. And if you don't use it wisely, you're definitely you could screw up another person's life, because it comes like, I know you. I know it comes in very quickly and out of, I was going to say nowhere. The universe spirit is throwing stuff at you, and you as a human being have to filter it through your brain before you articulate it. And the amount of information that comes in to you having to be filtered to talk to a client, I could see that as being overwhelming, just from me doing well, I don't do it at your level, but it is kind of interesting how you have to, I hate to say dumb it down, but you have to be very careful on what you say. I've been in a situation where literally a grandmother energy came in and stood beside somebody, and I looked at the person and said, this is really, I know this is going to sound weird, but your grandmother just is stepping in. And the girl looked at me, turned around and spun and ran up a set of stairs. And I thought, okay, maybe I should. But the grandmother was jumping up and down, wanting me to point out, hey, I'm here.
Yeah.
Look, because she just happened to bump into me. But she was brought to the same place I was because the grandmother had a message, but I didn't know how to softly get into it.
Right.
I was surprised. And I just thought, well, I obviously wanted to be told if my grandmother was jumping up and down saying, hey, I've got this message. So that's what I said. But it's a very powerful gift that a lot of people take for granted if right at the beginning that, oh, you've got information? Okay, I'll tell them. Well, no, you've got to understand that the person has to be in a position of ready to receive that information. And I always, had the fallback was, well, grandmother would know if the person is ready to receive the information or not. Yeah, maybe not.
What you're saying is very, very interesting. Because that is the lesson, so to speak, that I was, I'll use that word lesson, that I was not taught, but I was made aware of last year. And it was in my meditation to this point exactly. And I don't remember what, when I was in meditation, I don't remember what I was conversing with them about. But I remember they said, my gift is not the big deal because we all have these gifts. My gift is not the big deal. They said, your biggest responsibility is how you deliver the message. And I remember when they said that and I went, oh, crap. And then they said, just because you know the truth does not mean someone wants to hear your truth. And I remember it was so profound. So profound. And I thought, because there is no black and white. It is a whole bunch of gray.
Yeah.
And that's where discernment comes in. And what you're touching on is something that I have been I'm very meticulous with my word, or at least let me put it this way. I strive to be as meticulous with my words as I possibly can because words are power. I've had the benefit of actually seeing that physically about 2 years ago for about a month. It blew my socks off. We always know that words are power. Yes. But I actually saw it. And I saw when people talk, when the words they use, how it impacts their energy field without them even knowing it. So I had a first-hand, so to speak, understanding of what it means. I think I needed to see it to really grasp it. So I try to be very meticulous with my words. I have in the past come, and I'm sure you have too, come to have experiences with people who, and I'm sure it's something they will learn on their own journey, but who think just because they know something, they're going to say it. And that is not always the case.
Yeah.
So discernment, I feel, is a quality that for anybody who does this kind of work, and I'm not talking about you, I'm just talking in general, discernment is something that really, and it's a skill, has to be learned, and it comes with experience. So just because someone, I'll give you an example. Yesterday, someone emailed me, and this will happen once in a while, right? Someone emailed me and said, I really love your videos, but I got to tell you, whoever is in your house, I can't watch the video because this person is very negative. And I just kind of went, isn't that interesting? The only person in my house is my husband. I'm pretty sure it's not that. So I kind of tuned into this and I sent it to my friend. I said, hey, what do you think of this? And we kind of exchanged ideas, coming to the same solution that most likely what's happening is, I know I don't have anything negative around me. I know that. This person is projecting. So I needed to use my discernment to go, okay, what do I do with this information? But this happens. This person is probably someone who picks up a lot of stuff, but this person may not be aware of their own shadows. So they might not be very aware of what they're projecting, and what they're projecting, what they're seeing about me, it might be very much about them. It has nothing to do with me. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. When just because somebody knows something doesn't mean they get to say it, because it's not. There's a lot of finessing that goes with that. Does that make sense? In other words, it's a huge responsibility.
It's an incredible responsibility.
Yeah, it's a huge responsibility.
Hey,
and I don't take it lightly.
I'm going to stop it right there and ask you, are you playing music?
No. But I'll tell you what it is. It's my freaking neighbor. And it's not even that loud where I am, but the speakers here are, the mic is very sensitive. So no, it's my neighbor.
Oh, okay. So
Sorry.
and it's going bump, bump,
Yes.
bump, bump, bump. Okay. I just
That's
sent,
the neighbor.
I'm just going to double check here. I'm going to see my daughter.
Yeah, it's right behind the wall. Yeah.
Yeah, hold on. Let's get my daughter to turn her music off to see what's going on. It off for a second.
I'm going to see if I can turn my mic down a little bit. That helps.
Oh, I can't hear you at all.
Can you hear me now?
Nope.
Can you hear me now?
Turn up a little bit more.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
And a little bit more.
Hang on 1 second. Oops, that's just
Get off the floor.
That's just stuff. It's all the way up right now. It's all the way up.
Was that where it was before?
It was where it was before, yes.
Okay. I'm just telling my daughter it's not her. It's definitely your neighbor. It's okay.
Sorry, nothing I can do about that one.
Hey,
It's not that loud on my side, but I guess the speaker really, the mic really picks it up.
The mic really picks it up, yeah. And when you turn the mic down, I just can't hear your voice.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. So we were talking about
Responsibility.
Okay. When you're ready, we'll go again. I'm just going to write down the time I did this. 31, 33, edit. So good doing a pre-recorded one.
Yeah, you can clean that, right?
Yeah. That way I could... Oh, look at that. I don't hear it anymore. Perfect. All right, so take a deep breath, and we're going to go again. I have a question. I had a question. I should have wrote that down. I'm sorry, Joanna. Just give me a second to get my thoughts again.
No worries. Not to worry.
Okay. Yes, a lot of people don't understand that we are actually coming into this understanding there is a responsibility on our behalf. Did that make sense? Understand that we understand that there is a responsibility on our behalf. I still get crap from psychics who say, well, you can't do readings on people unless they've given you consent first. You can't just walk up to somebody and say, there's a lady standing beside you, waving up and down, wanting to talk about your dog or something like that. Well, I always look at it at this side of the universe is really that up on getting that information to the person. Yeah, I'm going to start that conversation. It's just teaching myself how to start the conversation. It's not walking up and saying, hey, there's a lady standing out here beside you holding a stop sign and a chocolate cake, and does that mean anything to you? And they look at me like, okay, you're weird.
Right.
But that was how my grandmother died. But it's getting the person's attention calmly. And it's easier for you because you're a woman to pass this information on. If I am a man walking up to a woman who I don't know and say, hey, hi there. By the way, there's a dead person standing beside you.
Right.
And it's like, okay, the creep factor just jumps right out at them. It's learning how to do that. And I did take a course, the card reading course. And the only reason I took the card reading course wasn't to read cards, but how to articulate what I saw to the person I was reading, so I knew how not to completely freak them out. Is what the easiest way to put it is.
Right.
One of the coolest things I ran into with you was when you were on our show doing a whole bunch of readings. This is back in about 2015, 2016. Tell the listener about this. And this just wasn't you, because I checked with mediums in the UK and in the United States and in Australia. There was a time when our primary guides, our team, took a step back, and this is going to be, for some people, a little bit hard to understand, but the only way I could describe it is an extraterrestrial being stepped in.
Yeah.
That wasn't just you. That was like 80-some%. Now, I was talking to Marianne Morgan, my friend in the States, and she said that happened to her, but she asked him to leave. Yeah. So there was a, people did, people did have a choice. You have to excuse me, I got the 24-hour COVID. I think I've got the COVID-18. Anyway, so this event was fascinating, and your fellow allowed us to ask him anything, as long as it wasn't controversial or conspiracy related, like the 9/11 towers and
that was Rob, wasn't it? Rob.
Yeah, Rob. Yeah,
it was Rob.
We called him Rob, and it was kind of fun because we did a whole 2 hours with him at one point, and he talked about Bigfoot and the Loch Ness monster, and I snuck two or three questions in on the Kennedy assassination before he shut me down, but it was very, very cool. That said, that connection to the other side of not only who we as human beings are and what we're doing here, but to the greater multiple dimensions and multiple beings that exist in the universe. Mm-hmm. You yourself have a team. You describe them. And you just have another guy, too. Didn't you have Paul? Somebody named Paul come through?
So speaking of the whole extraterrestrial, I almost want to say my entire team right now consists of mostly extraterrestrials.
Oh, really?
I can't believe I just said that out loud. I did. Okay, it's out in the open. Yeah. Yes. As a matter of fact, when I do my healings, it is our Arcturians that I work with.
That is fascinating.
Yeah. Now, and remember Anna, Blue Being? Anna?
Yes.
Yes. So she became, I became aware of her around the same time that we were working together. And I remember, because she would first appear to me when I was still working in my kitchen, and we were doing shows. I was in my kitchen. And I remember she was just there, and she wasn't really saying anything. She was just observing. Well, last year, she came back and she introduced me to a whole bunch of her kind.
Well, we talked about you because you would come on the show with a number of other psychics who would, in their conversations with you, basically say, yeah, you're not from around here, Joanna. You aren't, okay, you're from Poland, but by way of some other universe somewhere. So it wasn't like you were spiritually a stranger to the other side, an extraterrestrial group.
As you're saying this, I want to get emotional because there's a part of me that's recognizing that. So I'm going to give you an example. Last year, when I became aware of her, and this was after my ayahuasca retreat, shortly after, like literally within 2 months after, when I thought I was going crazy. Literally, I thought I was going crazy. She appeared to me, and I began to have a conversation with her because it's like, oh God, you come back. I haven't seen you in a while. And it turns out that she was scoping me out, basically. She was getting me, all those years ago, she was getting me to get used to the idea of having a blue-looking being next to me, right? And the Arcturians that I worked with are blue. And during our conversation last year, I had this awareness that I was in a ship, and I was really startled. Not afraid, but kind of startled, because this was not something I expected, to just kind of find myself on a ship. And it was really funny because she was there with me, and she looked in my face, and she had this mischievous smile, as almost to say, Joanna, this is you. And I remember when she said that to me, I went, oh my God, I am one of you. And I'm getting chills as I'm saying this. And it reminds me, again, last year, because a lot of things happened last year. I was doing a hypnotherapy session with a friend of mine, and I don't know, we were talking about, anyway, she was doing a session on me. It was nothing about extraterrestrials. But somehow I shifted to this other awareness, and all of a sudden I became aware of myself as a blue being. And I remember looking at my fingers, and I had 3 fingers, and I remember I began to cry. And it's not because I was afraid, but because it was home, and I missed it so much. And it's even as I'm saying it, it's evoking that emotion in me. So putting all these pieces of a puzzle together, I'm going, there is something to it. And yes, I have people said to me, you look like an alien. I don't know what that means. I don't see myself the same way as other people do. I don't know. But from the age of about 4, I've always had a fascination with aliens. Ever since I can remember, it's just been something that was always an interest of mine. So I think you're onto something. But at the same time, I truly believe that none of us are from here. We're all from other places. Now, perhaps I have spent, majority of time on other places. I mean, I don't know. I know I've spent many lifetimes here because I've had the visions. But that, that's something I will never know until I actually flip over to the other side. But that makes sense to me, makes sense to me. So anyway, that's my story.
That's a very interesting story. Mm-hmm. And if somebody were to look up, or you've probably Googled what an artist's rendition of an Arcturian alien looks like.
Yeah.
Have you? Yeah, it's kind of that bald head.
Yes. Big black eyes, bald.
Yeah.
Very small mouths.
Small nose, like little tiny kind of nose. Yeah. Now, this is, and kind of a long gown, maybe with a sash. Anyway, here's my July 2019 thing. I'm getting a impromptu, like out of the nowhere, I'm getting a regression done. And I'm looking at the psychic I'm with, and she's saying, so what are you seeing? And I said, and I describe basically an Arcturian, but not too blue. Mm-hmm. Right? And it's me, and I'm wearing this long gown, and I'm coming in, and I come down onto a pier that's out in the water. And I land on this pier, like just floating down, and I walk down the pier, and there's kind of a hole that goes down under these green treed mountains. Really beautiful. It was day, and I went down into this tunnel, and it was like walking into the way I can describe it is walking into a mall. On the right, there are people going one direction. On the left, they're coming out, and there are things. I know I'm conscious of things that are off to the sides, like stores in a mall, but I'm not looking at them. Mm-hmm. And I keep walking down, and most everybody looks like me. And I walked down to an area that opens up, and there was like 2 or 3 levels, and it was like granite or marble, and there were big chairs, and these chairs had armrests on them, maybe about 20 inches wide, and they were kind of shallow chairs. And she said, what do you see? And I said, I see chairs. And she says, there's one that's empty. And I said, yes. And she said, what are you going to do? And I said, I guess I have to sit in it. So I went up and I sat in it, and sat there for a few minutes and got up, and I left. And as I'm leaving, this is where it got weird. She says, who are you? And I said, I'm my higher self. Mm. And she said, and who is your higher self? And I paused and said, I am my primary guide.
Interesting.
So and in 2012, when the psychic first sat me down and talked to me about all this woo-woo stuff that I had no conscious belief in at the time until after this conversation with her, she described my guide as a bald guy looking like he was from Egypt about 30,000 years ago. And I asked what his name was, and she said he laughed because we were always trying to put human names on people. Mm-hmm. And she said has never been terrestrial. So both of us went right over our heads that he's never been from this planet.
Interesting.
So the person I was describing in this regression was the person who was my guide, but my guide is me. So that was like a complete circle.
Your guide is you in a higher consciousness, like on a higher, like I know what you're saying. I know exactly.
Yeah, it's like the snake eating its tail.
Yeah.
It's a circle. It's like I am my spirit guide.
Yeah.
But not. It's like he's just he's allowing me to play in this meat sack here. Mm-hmm. And probably just shaking his head saying, oh, we're going to have to do this again. We're gonna, look, oh, he didn't do that. Oh, okay. We're just, all right. Who's going to be his secondary or his third, or what part of the team are we going to send down now to correct this? We're going to clean up this mess. So that's how I think that he's looking at me. But it's very similar to what an Arcturian looks like, but I can't tell you if that is something that resonates with me or not. I just know it's similar in physical description. Mm-hmm. Which, could be a neighbor. But that, anyway, it was very interesting when you said the Arcturians, and connected to you, because it does totally make sense. And years ago, it was a few of us pointed it out, saying, yeah, okay, Joanna, you're not really from around here. You can come sit with us at the table, but yeah, you have to sit over there. No.
Really? That's what you thought back then?
No. Oh, yeah, we talked about it. We talked about you being more ET.
Well, maybe you talked to somebody else about it. I mean,
no, we discussed this actually on air with you.
Maybe I lost the memory. Wouldn't be surprising.
Yeah, but we did that, every weekend for 2 years or so. So it was one of many conversations. But I always remember talking about that, and it was like, it was your energy. It wasn't how you physically looked, even though you do have horns. But the
3, I might add, not just 2.
Just 3. Try Sarah and Joanna. We were talking to Joanna, the medium. She is in the process of rebranding. Not really, because you're still a medium, but your modalities have changed. You've gone circling around back to you did as the hobby job, wanted to be a hypnotherapist, but you are a helper. You're somebody who wants to heal. So now you've kind of grown into the healer aspect in your modalities. And if people want to go check out your website, it is joannathemedium.com. Right. And please, if you're into, you want to know a little bit more about your horoscope, Joanna the Medium on YouTube. It's wonderful. My tenant and I, you come into the house sometimes and it's on the TV. It'll be Joanna talking. She does a 1 month read on all the horoscopes. Again, that's Joanna the Medium on YouTube. It's fascinating, the fascinating stuff that you connect to and how accurate everything is. And it always has been accurate. There was, before we get into the healer thing, I got to remind people, we did do a show on September 11th once at 9/11.
I remember that one.
And a fellow from New Jersey called up and said, so what do you see? And you basically described his cousin to a T who died in the North Tower falling through. And it was funny. You said, I don't understand this, but he puts his hands behind his back. He pulls out a cigarette in one hand and takes a big puff and pulls out a steak in the other hand. And you said, I just don't understand what that is. And the guy starts laughing. He says, yeah, that's my cousin. He was, before he passed, the doctor told him, you got to quit smoking and cut down on your cholesterol and fatty foods. So he was showing him that, yeah, look what I can do here. I'm all good.
Do you remember during the same night that a lady showed up?
Yes.
And we had somebody actually look into it?
Yeah, he brought the dead cousin who died in the North Tower, whose body was never found. Yeah. He brought forward a lady who, during the show, we determined worked in his office.
Yeah, it was crazy. That was crazy.
She was pregnant, and she was showing you that her feet hurt. And it was because she had brand new shoes for the job. That's crazy. They weren't broken in. And it was really, what I found was sad about that, she wanted to pass a message on to her family.
Her husband, yeah.
That she should have answered the call. Because I guess he phoned, we're guessing that's what she meant, that he must have phoned, but she said, I'll call him back kind of thing. But while we were on the show, somebody actually started Googling people in the North Tower and whatever office, and maybe he did, the fellow who did this, because he knew what company his brother or his cousin worked for, and came up with the name that you gave us and her description, just her first name, and the description, but he narrowed it down to the person, and they did find her. And very, very Catholic family. Mm-hmm. Incredibly Catholic family, which is what made everybody take deep breath and step back. And again, we're going back to the beginning of the show when we were talking about how to communicate something with a loved one.
Yeah.
How do you breach that? So we kind of left it to people on that side of the planet over in New York, New Jersey, to deal with that, because they were the ones digging into it a little bit more. Whether or not that message would mean a lot to the people at the time, or the how we received the message was more traumatic than the actual message itself being received.
And I felt, and I still feel, I'm bringing back the memory, that she really wanted to get it out there, that she was talking to us, and that she was pregnant, and that it can be looked up like this was a real thing. It was really important for her to get that out. And, whether someone believes it or not, that, none of us have control over that. That's, the beauty of free will. But she really wanted to, because she just showed up. She just showed up. I have a lady here, and she's showing me she's pregnant. I don't know who she is.
Yeah, it was fascinating. And those are the kind of things that that people like me who hang around with you people, with you, and people who are gifted like this, people who have that intuitive side cranked up like you do. It's fascinating when these stories come through. I'm still fascinated that you can talk to somebody over the phone who lives on the other side of the planet and give them a reading. And I've done card readings over the phone, and I still can't figure that out. I'm still trying to get my head around that. I'm pretty good with someone sitting in front of me, and I think maybe it's my comfort level.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, they're right here.
Yeah,
but
that's all it is. Yeah,
I've read for psychics in the United States over the phone and told them about one of the, and I won't mention her, but because it was a reading, but I mentioned, do you remember sitting on with your sister? You're jumping, you fell through the front window of a car. Like, was that an accident, or you went through the front window? And she said, yeah. And I said, it's a big old blue car. And she said, no, it doesn't ring a bell to me at all. We never were in an accident where we went through the window. And I said, okay, I'm just getting this image of a real happy time in your life, and it got this going through the window of a car. And she, I don't know what that's about. Well, she happened to mention it to her sister, and her sister says, don't you remember we were playing on Dad's old beater car out in the field, and we were jumping up and down on it, and we were having a great day, and we actually broke the front window when we both fell in, and we were laughing. And it's like, oh, okay, that's exactly. So she had no memory of it, and her sister pointed it out back when they were young, and they were her dad's old big blue boat of a car that was not running, but they broke the window and fell through it. But it was a really happy, which is still a odd thing to be the happy time in your life. But I've learned just to say them out loud now, and just let throw the chips out, and however they lie.
Yeah.
And this is what I just was given. Try to fit that into your life.
And that takes, with me, and to this day, I have moments when I struggle. It's just going to be probably part of my life until the day I die. It's just part of my personality. It's just I always want to give the best, and I hold myself to very high, very, very high standards. And I come from a space of not trusting myself at all to now being able to basically allow Paul to speak through me without me filtering stuff. So it takes a lot of time to develop the trust that even though you are saying something that makes no sense to the person, you have to stay confident in the fact that it may not make sense to them right now, but there is a message in it. Yeah. And sometimes that's very difficult. I know it was for longest time. It's not as difficult. It still is, but not as difficult, because the attachment to wanting to know that you're correct is very, very real.
Yeah.
That's the ego. And the moment the ego is in charge, I feel the message is potentially not as pure. It's filtered.
Right.
Much more. So it takes confidence to just kind of go, okay, this person may not, because sometimes a person will say, I don't know, I don't know what this means. And I've learned to say, trust me when I tell you, when it's meant for you to be you'll know. But if it wasn't meant, I wouldn't be saying this to you. And 9 times out of 10, I'll actually get an email saying, oh my God, I now know what you mean. And sometimes it's 2 years later. Yeah. So it doesn't happen as often as it used to, but maybe because it needed to teach me confidence. But yes, exactly. Saying things that may not make sense to somebody, because those kind of take you back and go, did I make this up? It's real. Like, it's real. The self-doubt is real.
Oh, I remember when you were reading for somebody and things didn't make sense for you.
Yeah. And
you were describing this man, fella called in, and he was another fella from the U.S. called in, and he said, is there anybody who's coming through? Because, just the generic, I don't have any questions right now, who's around. And you said, well, okay, there's a man coming through and he's wearing a vest. And there's this weird patch on his vest, and he's showing me the patch, this square on his vest. And he's very, very proud of this vest. And the guy's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Mm. But you kept going. And then you paused and said, oh my God, there's bugs on it. And because of your background and, your growing up and his background and his growing up, he knew his dad had a fly fishing vest and was very proud of the flies that he'd tie to go fishing. And that's where they're displayed, on his fly fishing vest. Mm. And he needed to know that information to confirm, again, the evidential medium, to show evidence that you are talking to somebody they know, that this was his father coming through.
Yeah.
So as soon, and we used to do this and this is very, very common in group readings, or somebody like you is doing a reading. And it used to drive me crazy when I had a psychic on and someone phoned in and said, the first 20 minutes was them describing their mother, and like, okay, yeah, that's my mother. Okay. And then the medium would say, and she's got blue hair. Yeah. Okay. It's my mother. And, she's showing me this. Yeah, okay, it's my mother. Okay, it's your mother. Now, what's the message? Mm-hmm. And that was, and I remember you growing through that, where you didn't have to keep repeating or proving it's the mother.
Correct.
We got the mother. What's the message?
Yeah.
It's up to the person, and it's to the client or to the person who's getting the reading to have their belief kicked in where, okay, that is my mother. And as soon as that happens, boom, the information comes. It's
almost like the evidence helps the person to relax and open up. And when you have the evidence, this is what the ego says. That's interesting. I wonder what else she has to say. If the evidence is not there, oftentimes the door remains closed. So whatever message comes in may not be as received. So I don't do these type of sessions. It don't happen very often to me because my work has evolved, and I don't spend almost any time on bringing dead people through. It's on rare occasion when they will show up, but in the beginning, it was very much okay. I need to make sure that this person is comfortable with the fact that whatever I'm talking about is real. But that was a lot of it. It was about me.
Yeah,
a lot of it was about me because I needed to make sure that the person was comfortable, but I'm not responsible for the person's comfort. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And again, just growing. And so I guess the long story short is I don't do these sessions anymore. It's just not, I've evolved from it. Not that there's anything, absolutely not that there's anything wrong with it. It has its place. For me personally, I've moved on. I've moved on to what I'm passionate about, which is my job, it's not even a job. My passion is to help you understand your power. And the way I'm going to help you understand your power is I'm going to show you how you block yourself from it. That is what I love.
Perfect. And that's Joanna the healer.
Yes. Although I've always been a healer, if you really think about it.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
It's just that I had to kind of sort of own it. And I've had, it took me quite a while to actually step into, to actually embody it. Because I had a real problem with it at the beginning, not because I didn't want to, but because there was a really strong part of me that felt undeserving.
Really?
of it. Oh, God. Yeah. I remember when I was doing the ceremony when a being, alien, let's use that word, even though I don't like the word alien because it somehow diminishes the being for me. But this being basically said to me, "You're not Joanna the medium anymore." And I said, "What?" And he said, "It limits you." He says, "You're a powerful healer." And when he said that to me, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And the feeling that came with it was this deep, undeserving, and it was so palatable. I just went, "Oh, God." And he says, "Look, you're all healers. That's a fact. Now you have two choices. You either accept it or you deny it. It's up to you." And I just went, "Well, I'm not arguing with you, that's for sure." And I said, "Okay, I'll accept it." So what this taught me is this. We're all healers because we're all energy. It's not even like we're all energy. And as such, we manipulate energy 24/7. We do it mostly unconsciously. Okay? And because we have the ability to do it, it means, because what is healing? Healing is to bring things back to balance. That's what healing is. I don't do the healing. I help a person find their own balance, but I cannot make a person balanced. Why? Because I'm not the person who is making them unbalanced. What I can do is I can facilitate and push the energy. Actually, one of the things that they said to me the other day was, "I'm like a battery charger. You know when a battery runs out of juice, and then you have to kind of charge it. That's essentially what my job is. I will infuse you with certain frequency, and that frequency will push through the blockages that you have. But then it's up to you to keep going." Right? So I don't know how I got on that tangent, but
that's good. No, it was a good tangent. But I'd like to take you back, though.
Yeah.
Actually, before we get, I want to go to the ceremony.
Please.
And we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But before that, I want to go back a bit ago. You were talking about 2 years ago, you could see words. What did you mean by that?
Okay, so what happened was I became aware of when I spoke words or when I thought words, and when people spoke words, I saw energetically the frequency of each word. It's like, how can I explain it? See, some of these things are beyond language. I think this will illustrate it. It's like I saw certain words like clouds. Certain clouds were fluffy and light, and certain clouds were dark and scary. And these clouds had an energetic effect on a person's energy field. It's a simple example. You know the experiments that have been done with water, when you say to water, "I hate you," and then when you say to water, "I love you," and you look at water particles under microscope, the ones that say hate and the ones that say love look completely different. The ones with hate were completely distorted. You know that experiment?
Yeah.
That's the best way that I can explain it. So for example, I was sitting with a friend, we were having a coffee, and she was talking about just some of the things that she was talking about, and I became aware of certain words that she was using, and it was part of her vocabulary. But these words had a lot of heaviness to them. So the more that she said certain words, the more it solidified her skewed belief about life and herself. Now, she wasn't aware of it because it was something she's done all day long, and she was just on autopilot. But I was able to see it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, since then, just by pure observations, like when you talk to somebody, observe the type of words they use. Okay? You'll notice that people will use certain words quite frequently, and that can tell a lot about their belief system. Now, they may not piece those together because they're in it. So it's like being in the middle of an emotional crisis. It's hard for you to be very objective. You have to be outside of it in order to be objective, right? So you as a person that's observing, I see this all the time. Like I see right now how a person thinks. It's something fairly new to me. It's hard to explain how I see it, but it's like I can see the way their mind works, And because of that, I am able to almost accommodate my language so that we come to the same, so that it's complementing them. In other words, if I say things that are contradictory to how they formulate words, they may not be as open to receiving the message. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, and you'll find that probably in your readings too. With certain clients, you will use different vocabulary with different people. Do you notice that?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's because it's like, let's call him spirit, knows what's going to feed the client the most in a positive way, and they will feed you the information in that way so that it's most absorbed by the person. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I could relate to that from back when I was a policeman and interviewing people. And I took these courses in interview and interrogation, and, I worked organized crime and major crime and things. And they used to teach you modeling, which was speak to the person at the same cadence and using the same vocabulary that person would use. I would never consciously do it. It would be subconscious. I would just walk in and start talking to somebody and end up coming out of that conversation with the same, almost their same accent as they had.
Right.
And it would just be easy for me to have a conversation with somebody. But again, too, and I've often referred to this, when I'm talking to that person, they're at a very low point in their life. Their vibration is either sparkly or really low.
Right.
And I'm coming in with a higher vibration, so it's very easy for them to talk to me, which then made it easier for me to talk to them.
Right.
Whether you were getting them to try to admit to a crime or not, it was just an easy conversation to have.
Yeah.
And I've always had that. I could talk to, casually have a conversation with a person who is a very high level organized crime figure where I work, and they would always have a very easy time talking to me. We just knew we didn't talk about work. I didn't talk to them about crime, and they didn't talk to me about policing. We talked about motorcycles. Right. Or hockey. And the conversations were absolutely natural and fine, and we got along great. But it was an interesting connection, that energy connection with people like that. There was a gangster here who other gangsters were trying to kill him, and he was being followed by the police 24 hours a day. And he would pull over sometimes, and the gang guys would pull over and say, hey, what's going on? And he says, you know what? You want to talk about hockey. And that 20 minutes of conversation at the side of the road, he said one day to the police, after an hour of talking to them, and he said, you really should get going. We can't just be talking to you all day. And he said, this is the safest I feel all day long. Because he's surrounded by police. Then he has to go off and do his thing and not try to get killed by the other bad guys.
Right.
So it's very, very interesting, that connection of a lower vibration person to a higher vibration person, and how your conversation drops to that level. Yeah. Or rises to the level of the person you're talking to. I shouldn't say it doesn't always drop. It may rise to the level of that person. And as you are doing a reading for someone and opening that door, the communication skill that is just switched on in you allows you to make that connection, because the information that you're passing on, the healing that you're doing, the opening that modality up and giving them the energy, that is all based on a pure form of communication. It can't be broken up. It can't be going around corners or over hills and stuff. It's got to go straight, energy to energy, or it's not going to help them.
Right. So when you were talking about using certain cadence and using certain words in order to get a certain response from somebody you were interviewing, what were you doing? You were manipulating energy. Yeah. That's manipulation of energy. Now, we're not talking manipulation in terms of negative. We're talking about the ability but that's words. That's right there. Perfect prime example. Yeah. Of how we manipulate energy with words. Now, most of us do it unconsciously. When we call ourselves names, when we compare ourselves, every single person, I would say, every single person knows that when you talk to a young child in a way that makes them feel low or negative, chances are pretty high this child is going to grow up not feeling very good about themselves. Yet we do it to ourselves all day long, and somehow we feel it's different. Why is it different? There's no difference. There's no difference. You either solidify your current belief system or you create a new one based on what you say or what you think. There's only two ways. You either solidify what you know or what you believe, which could be good or not good or in between, or you are creating something new.
Yeah.
Right? So when people say, oh, I'm stupid, every single time you say to yourself you're stupid, you are solidifying something about you that I can guarantee you don't want. Because nobody wants to be stupid. Nobody wants to be insecure. Now, I have yet met a person who says, I want to feel shitty all day long. I haven't met that person yet. I don't think it exists. Right?
No.
Yet the way we communicate with ourselves is we create our experience by the relationship we have with ourselves. Basically, that's what it is. So healing is really about what is your relationship with you. If your relationship with you is out of balance, that out of balance will be shown to you in your life, whether it's in a physical form, psychological, emotional, whatever. But a lot of it stems in the relationship we have with ourselves. Many people, the ones that I've worked with and have for many, many years, have a very unhealthy relationship with their self, myself included. It's something that I am learning and something that I'm really opening my eyes to. It's all about how we relate with ourselves and then with the rest of our world, including how we relate to fear. Most people want to get rid of fear. Well, what if we thought of fear as a tool for transformation? What if from the very beginning of our life, we were taught that even though fear feels not great, it is something that ultimately can be embraced? Because the moment you change your relationship with fear, it takes on a different meaning. Number one, you're not as opposing to it because you're treating it more like a friend. And generally, when you have a friend and friend is helping you or an ally, you don't want to get rid of it. You don't want to fix it. You don't want to destroy it. So a lot of it is about how we relate with ourselves, right? Most of the conditions that I have come to work on during healing are, I'm not going to say they're responsible for how we feel, but there is an absolute definite connection to our emotional state. And by far what I've seen the most problems that I've seen come as a result of a suppression.
In what way?
Suppressing aspect of ourselves, suppressing our feelings, suppressing our emotions, suppressing our beliefs in order to fit in, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Because when we suppress aspect of ourselves, whatever it is, we're essentially saying no to part of who we are.
Okay.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When we suppress those aspects of who we are, it's almost like we create this void. And that void is a need. That need, as long as it's a need, it has to be fulfilled. So as we suppress aspects of ourselves, it creates a void, and then we go out on our merry way and try to fulfill that void from the outside. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. I'm not only understanding what you're saying, I'm thinking into my life going, yeah, I do that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do this. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just going through a checklist of stuff that I shouldn't be doing.
When I was shown this in this particular way, I just went, wow, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
That's why when we try to fulfill things primarily from the outside in, there is no lasting value. Because the moment whatever that is from the outside disappears, goes away, gets broken, we're back to square one. So ultimately, it always has to come from within first, and then it can be complemented from the outside.
Now, when you do your healings, and it's energy healing, I was talking to a friend of mine, Heather Ray Dawn, who does sound bath and breath work. It is more physical. Yours is... I was going to say woo-woo, but yours is dealing with somebody's energy and clearing the blocks. Now, one of the things that you talk about, and if people want to go see your website, joannathamedium.com, and look at the energy healing side of things, one of the things you talk about is one's conditioning.
Yes.
And the unawareness and disbelief in it. Once you understand that this type of healing works, it opens huge doors up for clearing and basically being able to almost heal yourself.
Absolutely, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I became aware, when you're in a ceremony, when you're in a plant ceremony, obviously everyone has their different experiences, but there are some shared similarities. When you open up and your human perception kind of steps to the side and you begin to see beyond the normal human thinking, and you realize the power of intention, it is as clear as day that everything is intention.
Yeah, it's all intent.
Unmistakable.
Yeah.
And it's palatable. In that state, it's like you can touch it. And then we go back to our old thinking selves and it just kind of diminishes, right? So everything is intent. That's why I was saying at the very beginning, we are all beings made of energy. We manipulate energy all day long. We don't realize we're doing it, but that's what we're doing. When we are, now I'm going to put a caveat here. What I'm going to say next does not mean that we are to blame for the problems that we are having or for the conditions that we are experiencing. That is not what I'm saying. What I am saying, however, is that in my experience, and I think it's shared by many, any condition, psychological, physical, emotional, or otherwise, has at least been contributed by us. Now, there's one thing that comes up which I have difficulty with, and I still haven't figured this out. For example, when a child is born and has cancer, it's pretty hard to say that the child did something to create this disease, right? It's not black and white. In this instance, my belief is that this particular child in spirit has chosen to have this experience for various reasons. It's not just for the child itself, but for all those people surrounding the child.
That's exactly what I get.
Right. Yeah. Moreover, what I feel is that the energies or the conditions to which the child has been brought in are, what's the word I want to use is, it's like the conditions are ripe for the illness to manifest. Again, I'm not putting blame. Let me see if I can find an example here. Example, here's what I'm being given. Let's say a child is born. This is purely speculative, but that's the example that's showing up. Let's say a child is born into a mother who was extraordinarily fearful. That child is born into a mother who carries a lot of heavy energy. Is it her fault that she's fearful? No, it's not her fault. But she is the one that's emanating this frequency. Now, child being a part of her will automatically take on that energy.
So it's absorbing the fear from the host.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So am I putting a blame on the mother? No, not at all. I'm just saying certain conditions are ripe in order for something to be manifested.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. My belief system is that using the child being born with cancer and maybe not surviving more than a year.
Yeah.
I look at it as that individual child, the spirit of that child is coming in because the gift it's giving is aimed at the family. Maybe the family was about to break up. Maybe there was a whole bunch of stresses and concerns, and the family itself was disintegrating, going off into different directions. It shouldn't, that we're going to be taking it completely off path.
Right.
But by adding that child to the mix, it kept those who were leaving or those who were putting out energy into areas that they shouldn't have been putting energy into. It kept them in the group.
Right.
Because they had to be there.
Right.
So a child itself, that one soul, maybe kept 3, 4, 5, 6 people on path.
Correct. I'm also getting there could be very much a karmic component where, a child comes in with a disease, and by taking on that disease, it helps to clear the karmic patterns.
Yes.
That's what I just got. So I want to make sure that I say this very emphatically. I am not saying that if a child is born with a disease, they somehow made it happen. That is not what I'm saying.
No. Yeah, I had a girl that I knew from the dog park whose daughter had severe autism and basically blind. And I was out of town, and her daughter, who was probably 8, I can't remember her age now, unfortunately. Her mother, had a hard time. Single mother, living, at her parents' place now, teacher, and very, very limited on social life, obviously. Went through a number of relationships, but those relationships weren't feasible or didn't work out. And this girl was very, very, her energy was very depressed, but worked really hard and loved this daughter so much. Well, when I was out of town, the daughter went to stay with her dad for the weekend. They had separated, and fell out of a window and died.
Oh, jeez.
And about 3 blocks from where you live. I hadn't seen the girl for months, and she was at the dog park, and I looked at her, and her daughter came through standing beside her. And this is where you go, yeah, how do I explain this? And I said, I'm sorry to hear about your daughter. Excuse me, I don't want to break up here. But I said that your daughter's standing with you, and she's not wearing her glasses, and she wants you to know that everything's okay. The mother just looked at me, a young lady, and she said, and she knew I could see these things anyway, so it wasn't that much of a surprise. And this is the first time, and probably the last time I've ever done this, where I actually said, do you have any questions? Because I like, what? I don't do that. I usually I'm the conduit. It just comes one way. But we had for about 45 minutes, they had a conversation back and forth. Should we hyphenate the name on the bench in the playground that your favorite playground? We've got a bench dedicated to you. And the daughter who said, well, thank you very much, but that's up to you. Same way where we split the ashes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the daughter ends up being a being that has been in this person's life for many lives. And once, they could have been sisters, husband and wife, brother and sister, brother and brother. They've always been together. And it was time for her to leave. And that's why she left. And the mother said, well, did she hurt? She said, well, no, she said she was flying, and then she was standing and could see. And because she just she fell out a window. She didn't know she was falling out the window.
Yeah, wow.
And she died instantly.
Yeah.
So she said, no, I was flying, and then I was fine. And here I am. But we determined that this girl, she was in her life, and this is getting back to your topic here. She was in her mother's life for a reason, and it was a karmic reason because her mother had to learn. And when her mother got to a certain point, it was time for her daughter to leave. And when her daughter left, next relationship her mother had hooked, and her mother's stresses left her, and her life blossomed, and she was on path.
As humans, it's very difficult for us to look at tragedy like this, or any tragedy, especially when it involves kids. It's very difficult. I have difficulty when it comes with kids and with animals. My humanness kicks right in when people abuse animals, and I have a very difficult time trying to get to my spiritual self. It's just, that's my humanness, and I don't feel bad about it, but it's hard. It's not black and white. But yeah, it's very difficult to understand these things from a logical perspective, because it has nothing to do with logic.
Let's talk about the ceremony. What was it, and what did you come away with?
Oh, wow. Let's see.
There's an hour and a half right there, right?
Are you kidding? Well, that was 7 days.
No kidding.
In an hour and a half. So what is the biggest takeaway?
Oh, and what was it? Tell my listener what it was.
I'm trying to tune in. The biggest takeaway that I am being asked to say is that the awareness, and I don't know why it's hard for me to say it. Wow. The awareness that we are love. And when I was experiencing unconditional love, it was very hard for me. Now, someone would say, what's wrong with you, Joanna? It's only unconditional love. You have no idea how hard it is to be loved unconditionally when you deep inside believe you are undeserving of it. It is pain. And that is one of the things I had to learn. When I went to this ceremony, one of the things I hoped for and wished for and asked Mother Ayahuasca, I said, please teach me how to teach. I want to teach like she teaches. She's a master teacher. She is all about teaching us through our shadows. And she said to me, in order to teach love, you have to come from the space of love yourself. And I went, oh my God. And she said to me, she says, that's probably one of the biggest takeaways. She said, your job, quote unquote, is to facilitate remembering. And I knew exactly what she meant when she said that. My job in this physical body is to help illuminate person's belief. It's to help them remember who they really are by helping them see the things they are not. And oftentimes the things we are not, we hide from. Those are the shadow aspects. That's probably the biggest takeaway.
And that's what you meant by teaching through our shadows.
Yes, because she teaches by helping you confront your shadow.
Okay.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
And shadow is another word for fear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the shadow self is the fear. Because we are love, the only reason why we are not able to be conscious of it is because we are blocking ourselves from it, or there is something standing in the way of us being in tune with it. And it comes from basically being born into a structure that basically very early on says, you're not this, you're not this, you're not this, you should be this. You understand, right? We get on this identity, right? Our identity is nothing more than just a whole bunch of labels we picked up along the way. That's our identity.
Our identity reminds me of, those old soldiers in Russia?
Yeah.
Who have all the medals on them?
Yes, yes, yes.
That's not really who they are.
No.
But that's little bits and pieces that they've acquired through their life, and they wear them like it's their identity. Yeah. But it's not really their identity.
No, it's not. It's part of their
those
spirit.
are the lines on, it's when you cut a tree, all the lines on it, that's just the lines they've...
Right. So that's one of the biggest, there's so much, but one of the biggest takeaways was for me to see myself as this being that is unconditional love. And to not only experience it, but it's one thing to experience it, but it's another to embody it. Because in order for you to embody it, you first have to accept it. And going back to what we're talking about, rejecting aspect of ourselves. We reject ourselves 24/7 without even knowing it. So there's a lot of work that has to take place in order for us to accept it. You cannot have something unless you accept it first. That's a similar idea when I said it took me quite a while to actually embody the part of a healer. Even though this being said you are a powerful healer, I couldn't accept it. There was a part of me that absolutely said, I am not worthy of this. Are you kidding me? And then I had to make a conscious choice and said, okay, even though I do not feel it yet, I accept it. And that taught me something very important. And it's something I try to convey all the time. You can learn to accept things you don't believe in yet. You can learn to accept things you don't believe in yet. You can also learn to accept things you don't like. When you accept something you don't like, you make it a part of you, and then you can work with it, because the moment you accept it, you shift your relationship with it. You're not as in opposition to it. When you're not as opposition to it, you're more at peace with it. It's less, you're fighting it less. You're not trying to get rid of it as much. You understand?
Yeah.
It's like it becomes your ally. So the big piece was to not only experience unconditional love, but then to accept it as who I am. And that is still work in progress. That's still work in progress because the humanness kicks in. The other takeaway was the other one was being essentially told you're no longer a medium. It limits you. You're a powerful healer. And I'll be honest, when he said you're no longer a medium, part of me got scared. My ego got scared because my ego went, then what am I? Then what am I? The ego wants to label itself because without it, it doesn't exist. Without labels, it doesn't exist. And ego is afraid of its own death. So the moment we start taking labels off or away, the moment we less identify ourselves less, the ego starts to freak out a little bit.
Yeah, the ego's the hardest thing to get rid or to work through. That's a daily thing for me. Mm-hmm. You know, why you do certain things, why I part my hair on the right or left, or when I used to have hair. Hold on. I my entire head is apart. It's just getting, our ego is a reflection of what we perceive other people are seeing.
Yeah, and that's the ego the shadow is connected to the ego. The shadow is not the spirit self. The shadow is the ego self.
My gosh. And for my listener, it's Joanna's neighbor who's got the music going.
Oh, yeah. He just started. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. It's just kind of either that or you've taken yourself back to a Peruvian jungle with the ayahuasca. Now, you've actually do retreats. I don't know how that's going to work. You had one set up for, was it May? You guys were going to go down again?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's going to turn out again. So I'm scheduled to, I was scheduled to go in April. Now it's not going to happen to, looks like end of May. And it just depends what's going to happen, if it's going to happen at end of May. So that's a personal one. There is one that I am putting together, which is later in the fall, where I will be hosting it. So there will be a whole bunch of people coming together, and my role will be to be part of the experience with everybody, but also to help during the week to help people integrate their experiences. Because what I found is, myself included, what I found is that many people come out of these incredible experiences, and they're so profound, and oftentimes people don't know how to bring it back into regular life. That's the hardest part, I think. Now, I have the benefit of having to work. This is really loud, the music. Sorry, having worked with hypnotherapy, and really, I love diving to inner child work and shadow self. So I've been working on myself for a good part of 20 years now. So it helped me to integrate all that. But what I find is I feel it's actually that's the part that's missing. When people go on retreats, oftentimes they don't know how to bring it and put it into their lives. So my role will be to help people integrate their experiences, their learning.
Well, that's perfect. I know that ayahuasca is one of the most controversial subjects in our community, primarily because you've got these wannabe shamans showing up all over the place and mixing a thing, and here you go. You've had the talk for the last 2 hours, and now we're going to do it. Well, if you're going to do it right, it's like you say, it's 7 days.
It's 7 days, and I also say, and I've said this on one of the videos that I have on my YouTube channel about plant medicine. This is not a quick fix-me pill. That's not how it works, because Mother Ayahuasca doesn't fix you. What she does is she shows you how you are not broken.
Okay, say that again.
Yes.
She doesn't fix you.
She shows you that you are not broken.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Now, that in itself is the healing. When you begin to realize that you are not broken, that you are not all of the things you think you are. I'm not good at this. When you realize that is not who you are, and you feel it, that's when the healing starts to take place. But
excellent.
But we still have what's called a habit. We are in a habit of being ourselves every day, and I feel Joe Dispenza says it that way. You're in a habit of being yourself. You wake up every morning, you have certain thoughts, you do certain things a certain way. You're in a habit of being yourself.
Yep.
So you can come back from the ceremony and you can have what's called the halo effect for quite a while. I mean, mine was for about a good 2 weeks, where I literally was in the real world and it felt weird. It felt cold. It felt rigid. It felt almost like metal, overstructured. And I came from this beautiful experience where I felt the unity and the wonderment of the universe itself. And you just plunked into this world. So it takes a while, for the halo to go away. But once the halo goes away, you're back into your routine. And you come in with the knowledge, but then you have your habit of doing your routine. And your routine doesn't magically go away. If you want to change it, you have to make the change. So what she does is she will give you knowledge. She will help you have an understanding. The understanding helps you implement new aspects into your life, but she doesn't do it for you. she can't. That's the free will.
Yep.
And
It's
that's the
just pointed out to you.
responsibility. Yeah, and that's the responsibility. The biggest thing is, the other thing that she taught me was on the first 2 nights, because when you're in a ceremony, I mean, there's a lot of things going on. People are crying, people are throwing up. There are some noises that are coming out of people's bodies that you go, wow, what's happening there? And it doesn't necessarily mean they're having a bad time. Sometimes what looks horrible, you ask the person next day and go, oh my God, I had a time of my life. So it's not always an indication of something bad happening. But being an empath, I just kept sending healing to everybody on the first night. And halfway through the ceremony, the shaman's helper comes and she says, no, don't do that. This is about you. You need energy for you. And I just went, oh, and I wasn't even conscious. I mean, I was conscious that I was doing it, but when she said, no, this is about you, it made me go, oh, wait a minute. I have to focus on me. And Mother Ayahuasca said, there was a gentleman next to me that was having what I felt was a horrible time. Like he was puking his guts out. Like I thought he was going to puke his entire digestive system out. It was bad. And every time he would vomit, my heart would go out, and she would say this to me, Joanna, stay in your own lane. Stay in your own lane. Always remember everyone is on their own journey. The way you can help him is every time he vomits, celebrate with him because he's being reborn. And I thought, oh, I love that. So the takeaway was everyone is on their own journey. You can't really help anyone at the end of the day. You can help them to a certain point, but at a certain point, self-responsibility kicks in. It has to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm very vocal about it. When a client says, I want to deal with this, and that, it's like, okay, let's be realistic here. You just told me 35 years of troubles you want me to fix in 15 minutes. That's not how it works.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate that this it's not a quick fix.
No.
And like you say, it's a change of process. If you have been in a rut, you're off path, you're in a rut, and you come to someone like yourself to be shown what path you should be on, and you walk away saying, well, I went to this healer, I went to a psychic who told me I should do A, B, and C, and, well, I don't feel any different when I left. Well, dude, it's like, no, you were given a map.
Yeah.
Now, use the map and go somewhere.
Exactly.
No, well, I'm a little busy right now. I
Exactly.
gotta, pick the kids up, and it's like, oh, dude, it's like, that's not how it works. And a lot of people, and people don't understand this, is that people come to healers, and people come to a psychic at a specific time in their life. It's a gift. It's gifted to cross those paths. And I know that, and this is, I look back at when you used to have the phone-in shows. People would phone in. We'd say, hey, the lines are open. Anyone can call in. And it was going out to the world. And people would phone in from all over the world if they're awake, whatever time zone you ended up beaming into. But people would just like, hey, just for a joke, I think I'm going to call, or, dial and pass the phone to somebody. It doesn't really work that way, because these people, some of them were calling in, and you would tell them something and they say, no, it's not. And then off air, you and the other psychic would say, okay, they're full of crap. We're not going to be talking to this person anymore, because even their guides are shaking their heads. It just wasn't their time. But the ones that actually walk in off the street, or in your case, they'll go to your website, again, joannahthemedium.com, and maybe want to sign up for a healing session. It's time. So if you've actually gone through the process in communicating with a healer, getting a hold of Joanna, or finding a healer somewhere else, or having an experience in South America, a proper one, within the ayahuasca, like going through a proper ceremony, and not take the shortcuts with all the wackos out there, it's your time.
Yeah.
So pay attention to the gift you're given. Pay attention to the roadmap. I always say I'm a big one for journaling dreams. Mm-hmm. Come out of that ceremony and journal, for God's sakes.
Big time.
Right. Just sit down on the plane on the way home. friggin' dump everything onto the paper.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you'll forget things that you were shown. And pay attention. If you were actually go out of your way to do that, and you come back and you've journaled, and you hop on your bike and ride into the rut again, don't bitch and complain that it didn't do anything for you.
Totally. What came to mind when you were talking, when I was beginning to do my healing work, which was just a few short months ago, when they said, okay, it's time. I was like, okay. I at first I had a problem almost, because I couldn't quite figure out where the free will comes in terms of me doing the healing, person getting better, but where does their free will come in that says, well, maybe I don't want to feel healing? Because some people don't. They think they do, but subconsciously they don't. That can happen, right? And what was shown to me is that, because ultimately everyone is their own healer. What I do is I facilitate, I tune in the energy, I will send you energy. People actually feel physical differences, and they feel things leaving their body. So there is physical stuff happening, but at the end of the day, if you go back to your old ways and you don't use this as a starting point to try something new, you're not going to continue the healing. You'll just go back to the same old. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like, I'll give you an example. I was having a session with someone, or just before I had the session with my regular coaching client, and they asked me to do a healing just before I called her, and it was just kind of impromptu. So I thought, okay. So I tuned in, I sent her a healing, and then I called in, and halfway through the session, she keeps excusing herself, and I'm going, what's going on? She says, Joanna, I'm sorry, but I have to just kind of use the restroom. And I went, oh my God, this is how she's reacting to the healing. She said, it's never happened before. And I've had these instances since then, and I'm shocked when that happens, because the ego part of me goes, really? So there can really be some physical stuff that can happen. But at the end of the day, the healing allows for here's what the healing does. It pushes through some of the blockages. So you may get some stuff coming out so that you can clear, because when it comes out, it's in your face, you can clear it. And it's very supportive of putting new structures or new foundations forth. If someone ignores that and says, I'm going to go back to old ways, the healing is going to be short-lived at best, because they're not doing their part to create the balance. Remember, I'm just like a battery charger. I jump in, I charge the battery, I give you the whatever it is that is given, but then you got to continue. It's like going to somebody and saying, I want to lose weight, and you get a whole mop, and you even get the food prepared. If you go home and they put the food in the fridge and take out pizza, well, that's it, right?
Yep. So
the healing absolutely helps. And in many instances can produce incredible results, but it's not like having to deal with suppression for 35 years and having developed some really physical stuff that's not very good, and thinking that a 30-minute healing session is going to erase that. It's very unrealistic. Miracles happen, don't get me wrong, but there's got to be the personal responsibility that comes in, and I'm always very vocal about that. Always, if I feel like somebody says fix me, I always say, sorry, you're not broken.
Yeah.
So if you have an imbalance, let's look how are you contributing to that imbalance? Because guess what, you do. Of course you do. We all do. If there's an imbalance, we contribute to it. There's no question about it. Right.
I can live my life bitching and complaining that I should lose 5 pounds, but does it affect the way I eat? Probably not. I don't know why I'm gained so much weight. Well, because you're eating a lot and you're not getting exercise. No, that can't be it. Okay, tomorrow I'll work on that. Well, no, I just told you why. Fix it yourself.
You know what this reminds me of? Actually, it's fresh off the press, so to speak. Last night I was watching, sometimes I watch the 600-pound life show, and there was a woman on weighing quite a bit of weight, like she was quite obese, and she went to this clinic and she's trying to get the surgery, right? And they have to put her on 2 months diet just to make sure that she gets into good habits, because if she has the surgery but she doesn't have good habits, it's not, she thinks the surgery is going to somehow fix her. And the guy says, how is it, the surgery itself is not going to make you eat less or make you eat different choices. That is up to you. She couldn't understand it. She couldn't understand it. She was getting really mad. And it's like, that's kind of the same thing. You know, there is things that can be helpful, and absolutely things do help, but at the end of the day, you got to make a change.
Yep.
You got to make a change.
Yeah, my doctor is a traditional old Irish guy, and he basically said to me when I first met him, he says, I'm a traditional doctor, so if I tell you to do something and you don't do it, then I don't want to be a doctor anymore. But, oh, crap, okay. So if he says cut down on sugar or eat more buffalo or something, yeah, I got to do it, because if I don't, the next time I go see him, he says, oh, you've been up on your buffalo? Well, not that he would say that, but that's, if he will not help people who don't want to help themselves.
Exactly.
Amazing. We have been talking to Joanna the medium, who is also Joanna the healer. Joanna, what is, I'm basically going to put out to the world here, JoannaTheMedium.com is her website. Joanna the Medium on YouTube is a wonderful series of horoscopes that you seem to work really hard on, because you've got all the horoscopes once a month, and you do a full month per sign. But you also have a Facebook page, and now you've got a private community in the Facebook page, and that is for people of like mind, people who are interested in coming in. And it basically, if this resonates with you, if this type of modality, if this type of conversation resonates with you, Joanna has a Facebook community. Where can we find that private community? Do we just go to your Facebook page?
It's actually called Joanna the Healer, formerly Joanna the Medium.
Okay, Joanna the Healer, formerly Joanna the Medium.
And it'll show that it's a private group.
Okay, we could just click on the little thing and off we go. Absolutely,
yeah. The easiest way to think about it is, what is my work really about? I'm passionate about helping person realize their potential by helping them see the things they're not. Okay?
Excellent.
And it's all about empowerment. Everybody's idea of empowerment is different, but essentially it's the same thing. So in the private group, I will be having private live sessions with Paul, who is the bridge between me and higher consciousness. So we'll be doing things that are not available on YouTube or somewhere else. That's the benefits of, and we actually exchange information, and I come in and chime in, and people ask questions, and I share stories, but it's very private. It can be shared anywhere. It's so people have confidence that even if they share their deepest challenges, that nobody's going to see it, so they feel safe.
Yeah. And that's what we need at this time, particularly at this time, when the entire planet is, the anxiety driven and a little bit wonky. For those of us who have a little higher, a slightly higher sensitivity to other people's energy. I'm trying to be politically correct. Mm-hmm. for us who can feel everything out there, it's a good place to come and vent, or I shouldn't say vent. Come and exchange some ideas and talk amongst ourselves on how maybe somebody else is dealing with stuff.
And even how the current situation is affecting. I mean, it is affecting everyone around the world in various ways, and a lot of it is in a fearful way. And it's really about, how do we deal, what's being brought up right now? what's being brought up with each and every person. And a lot of fears are being brought up, right? And we can talk about, oh, this is happening because of this or that. At the end of the day, because I said to my team, I said, okay, like, with all this stuff flying around, is it real? Is it not real? Who made it? Who didn't make it? Like all this stuff. What is it? At the end of the day, what do I do with it? And it was so simple. At the end of the day, you ask yourself a question. How does it affect me, and what can I do about it? What can I do about it? What can each individual person do about what's being brought up within them? And what it comes back to is always one thing. It's all about your inner work.
Yep.
Because when you are feeling less fearful, this will not be your reality. They actually said to me, it is happening and it's reality for other people, but it doesn't have to be your reality. And I said, well, where is the space between, not wanting to know and being ignorant, but also, and it's like, you got to find that middle space, what works for you. If I listen too much to the news, I start getting angry. Like at a certain point, it starts to affect me. That's when my body says, okay, Joanna, enough. And then I have to go away, and then I have to rebalance myself, because once I start feeling that, then I'm tapping into fear. Once I stop tapping into fear, that I'm feeding the fearful aspect of me, which I don't want to feed. Right? So ultimately, it's my responsibility. What do I do with all this information? Am I going to be ignorant to it? No, because it's serious shit is happening, excuse my French. But does that mean I'm going to spend every waking moment listening to CNN talk about how many people have died? No, because that doesn't help me either.
No.
Right? So at the end of the day, we're being presented with an opportunity to really look inside.
Yep.
And this thing is saying to us, I'm in your face. What are you going to do about it?
Yep.
Because this represents fear. Yeah.
It does. And you'll find that the people who are working together are less fearful than the ones who are isolating.
Absolutely.
Well, I shouldn't say we have to isolate, but you know what I mean.
Yes.
The ones that are pulling back and afraid and not wanting to engage and not wanting to help other people, they're not going anywhere. They're stagnant. It's the ones that are out there helping, and the ones who are thinking of other people and communicating with them and sending a little text and just double checking, we're still connected.
And you know what is coming right now for me to share? I really believe, maybe it's a naive part of me, but I really believe that even though what's happening is not great, I feel there can be something beautiful that essentially comes out of it at some point. And each and every one of us has the opportunity to decide what does this mean to us, and what are we going to do with it? I had somebody the other day losing their shit, excuse my French, with all the theories about this and that, and people who are trying to get you, and monsters coming out of the closet. And I saw this person like, oh my God, this person is going in the black box. And it's like, we have to shake ourselves. If we fall prey into the fear, then the fear won. If we look the fear in the face and ask, okay, what does this fear bring up in me? What is it in me? Because it's a mirror. Think about it. It's a mirror, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we look at what is it in me and what can I do about it, then we can find our way around it, or we can find our way through it, not around it, through it. It's usually, in order to conquer a fear, generally you don't go around it, you go through it.
Yeah.
Right? So there's an opportunity for all of us to start evolving by shifting how we vibrate and what we believe, what we pay attention to, what we focus on is how we create our vibration. If we are constantly tuning into fearful messages, then we are feeding the fear frequency. It's that simple.
Yeah.
But it's at the same time not being ignorant to it. You can have something happening that's fearful, but you don't have to be plugged into it. You can be an observer, and you can do your best trying not to get sucked into it, because it's not about being ignorant. I don't think I don't think that solves anything either. But it's about, again, where is that middle point? How am I not too sucked into it, and how am I not ignorant? Where is the middle point? Right? And each and every person will have their own little middle, you know?
Oh yeah, it is. It's a fascinating. We should come back and talk about that, but not right now because you have to go. So,
it's been an hour and a half.
Not that I don't want you.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not that I don't want you to be here, but you've got to get going. We added another half hour or stuff, our bit on there. We've been talking to Joanna the Medium, who is Joanna the Healer. JoannaTheMedium.com. Joanna the Medium on YouTube, and Joanna the Healer, formerly Joanna the Medium, on Facebook on the private page, or Joanna the Medium on private or on Facebook anyway. Lots of ways to get in touch with Joanna. Go to her website again, JoannaTheMedium.com. See the different things she offers, and again, she's Joanna. She's still doing mediumship work because that's one of the things that she is able to do and able to help people with, a healer, and it's absolutely fascinating. Thank you very much, Joanna, for dropping by.
I really enjoyed this. Thank you very much.
Watching you while you sleep all alone.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. And hey! Let's be careful out there.
Far over the snow, what are those voices?
No!